Our theme tonight has been immigration and the experience of finding a new home overseas. In my case, my family are Polish and Ukrainian and Russian Jews who first came to the Lower East Side. They, like a lot of other people, they crossed the Williamsburg Bridge and came out to Brooklyn. In my family's case, one branch of the family went to East New York, and the other branch of the family went down to Borough Park. My dad actually went to automotive high school, but that's a whole story. The first people to leave the Lower East Side, starting around the time of the Civil War, were the German Catholics. And they used one of Robert Fulton's ferries that went from Grand Street in Manhattan to Grand Street in Brooklyn. And they began moving out here. The Irish followed them. And then so did the Jews and the Italians and the Polish. All of whom made their home on the Lower East Side and then went out in pursuit of better jobs and better housing in Brooklyn and in Queens. The Grand Street goes through Williamsburg, it crosses Newtown Creek, it becomes Grand Avenue in Queens, and there's another large Polish community in Maspeth, Queens. As I tell everybody who will listen, there is one big community that a creek runs through, and that we have more in common with each other, whether it be Greenpoint and Hunters Point or Greenpoint and Maspeth, than we do with communities just to the north and south of us. This immigrant experience, though, that we've all inherited is a little more visceral in terms of Martynka's experience, in terms of Olga's experience, or the people that were featured in Hank's film. Hank has been joined by one of the ladies who's in the movie. This is Rebecca Cooney, who actually lives in Blissville to this day. So, one of the questions I had, I got to review all the films yesterday on the internet, which was fantastic because I could watch them at home. The question I had for Martynka was, you've been working on your project for about 3 years. What is the premise and what is the status of your project?
Okay, it's a very long answer, but in brief. Yes, 3 years in the making. Fundraising was a big part of it. But first of all, the project, how's that? The project basically consists of a native plant meadow in McGorlick Park, which references what Greenpoint used to look like before urbanization. And in the middle of this meadow will be a ceramic orb, which I made out of a mixture of Greenpoint clay, which was excavated on Clay Street. And the glaze of the orb is made out of cups of soil from residents of Greenpoint, including many people in this room, who I asked to consider a location which somehow represents their identity through nostalgic association, from which they could gather a cup of soil. And in fact, the orb just came out of the kiln last week, and it will be installed in McGorlick Park on June 9th. And the idea was to create a group portrait of our multicultural community, and through the whole process and experience of people considering these locations and thinking about how we're all migrants, I wanted us to have something in common with each other and to bridge the divides between the Polish community and the non-Polish community and make us all acknowledge that we're migrants even if we move from just a part of Brooklyn to another. So does that answer the question?
It kind of does. I'm hoping that that you have contact information for everybody, a website that you can point the group at, yes, so that they can be there with you in June when the project is unveiled.
Yes, it's Ziemia.nyc is the website, and I've left these little cards by the ticket counter if anyone wants one. But basically, I just want to say that the whole premise of my project has, in a way, come true in this room, which is very emotional for me, because the fact that we're having the screening and people, like all the seniors came from DuPont and Amber and other places that are Polish and are sitting here amongst all these other people that I know from other parts of life and yourself and then the people from Blissville. That's exactly what the project is about, is that we're all like connecting in a place that we normally wouldn't connect. So it's really beautiful 3 years later that we're all sitting here.
Well, I think the film was a beautiful portrait, and I really, it was just an absolutely lovely depiction of the project and how you've been working on it.
Oh yeah, maybe I should just say what the film was for a second, because people might not understand, is that it was just a little snippet of my journey to Poland to collect soil on behalf of the seniors and the people that couldn't go to Poland. And that's just like a tiny part of my project, is that last summer I went there and collected cups of soil on behalf of a lot of the seniors, like Pani Helena, who was in past states, and others that are in this room. And I shot footage of the places that they often had not seen for 20, 30, 40 years, and they just had memories of them, and their interviews were telling me about the places, and then I showed them what they look like. So that's just to explain that little part.
It's awesome because every now and then you see a documentary that's actually documenting something, you know, that and bringing a picture back from overseas for people who haven't seen it in a long time. Marzena, I pronounced your name right?
Marzena.
Okay, Marzena. You are representing Olga, who's actually back home working on another project right now, correct? Helena in the film says, "Greenpoint is my little Polish village." The question is, for an immigrant, where is home? You leave your heart in two places when you move to another country. My wife is from the UK. And her parents are still there, her family is still there, and she often pines for, well, in her case, a Cornish pasty. But the question is, for an immigrant, where is home?
We asked this question in the documentary. I'm gonna switch for Polish, may I? And you can translate. Because I want to say, dobry wieczór do wszystkich obecnych tu na sali. Moim zadaniem w tym filmie było poszukiwanie materiałów archiwalnych i dzięki temu poznałam wiele osób, którzy właśnie dzisiaj tutaj z nami są.
She's saying that her role in the film was to be the researcher looking for all the archival footage, and she reached out to a lot of the people that in this room and others in the community to get old footage of Greenpoint.
I właśnie spotykając Was Państwo, pytałam też, gdzie jest Wasz dom. Wy pokazywaliście mi różne zdjęcia ze swoich albumów, pokazując zdjęcia z Polski, a również ze Stanów Zjednoczonych.
So, looking for this footage, she asked a lot of people, where for you is home? And people showed her a mixture of images and photographs and videos from both Poland and New York.
W filmie Olgi możemy zobaczyć, jak właśnie każdy z Was próbował znaleźć swoje miejsce w tym nowym kraju, czyli odnaleźć ten nowy dom.
And you can see in Olga's film that everybody was searching to try and find this new home here in the new location.
Państwo wiedzą o tym najlepiej, Ty też Martyna, że to nie jest łatwe.
And she's saying that we all know, including myself as a subject of being an immigrant, that it's not such an easy thing to find your home in a new place.
Pani Helena mówi właśnie, że Greenpoint to taka mała polska wioska. Widzimy tam, w filmie widzimy też polskie ogródki, niektóre ulice przypominają nam Polskę. Czyli próbujemy przenieść ten nasz dom do nowego domu.
So Pani Helena says that Greenpoint is our own little Polish village, and we all try and find our own little Polish village inside Greenpoint on the streets and in the gardens, and we recreate it.
Wydaje mi się, że każdy ma na to pytanie swoją odpowiedź.
And she's saying that she thinks that everybody that is an immigrant has their own answer to where
Gdzie jest twój dom?
where is your home? Where is your true home?
Hank, we'll get to you in just a second, my friend. Don't worry, your turn is coming. Rebecca, you're not originally from Blissville, so in some ways you're a domestic immigrant to a neighborhood in Queens. Do you see it that way? Because I know you in real life, and you have very much found your home in Blissville. I've read your amazing writing and about your experiences in Blissville, and do you have a similar feeling that you traveled from somewhere else to find a home in this community?
Yes. I was going to say other things, but yeah, I washed up, and I think almost everybody in that very crazy, eccentric pocket in Queens found themselves there partly for economic reasons and partly on the rebound of something, and it makes us an unusual tapestry of very different people and eccentrics.
So Hank, 27 years this took you. Now you call it a docu-poem. Now we have discussed this in public in the past. I do believe it's a film, and you stand behind this docu-poem acumen of yours. Please explain, Mr. Linhart.
Okay. First, let me say that my project began 2 blocks from here, on Kent Avenue in the corner of North 13th Street, where I lived for 17 years. And when I traveled to Blissville, I was leaving the political struggles I was involved with here in terms of gentrification and the waterfront and environmental problems. I would travel over to Blissville as an outsider and get to know the people. The whole thing of having a community or a place called Blissville is so evocative in what actually is somebody's Blissville. A lot of people think of a little village in New England, with white picket fences. And yet I found this other place that is actually called Blissville, which was dynamic with a mix of industry and residents, and just this incredible mixture of nationalities and ethnic groups. So to me, that had this whole other rich Blissville to it, and you can see in certain characters in the film, in the video, that some take it as a verb and some take it as a noun, or an adjective and a noun. Like the guy that ran the diner said, "I don't know, is it Blissville?" You know, but he's thinking, you know, that that's a descriptive term, and then other people are still remembering that it used to be the name before Long Island City was incorporated. So, yeah, I mean, it's more impressionistic, and I think it's not a straightforward documentary. It doesn't have experts in it talking about the origin of the name and things like that. And I think it's, and I take a lot of side trips to Romania and things like that. So I think of it as more of a poem where images rhyme throughout, like the Nash Rambler kind of rhymes with the white Cadillac later on. And it was all done in video. I don't pretend that it's a film at all, sticking to the technical terms. And I stand in a tradition from the avant-garde of people that made diary form media works. Journeys to Lithuania, George Kuchar's going to a motel in Oklahoma to wait for tornado season. I was quite aware of that, and also Frederick Waxman's Belfast, Maine. So I mean, I was working from that kind of tradition as a visual fine artist, drawing on those things as inspiration. I also was trying to figure out this video, because once I amassed all this material, it was over 165 hours, I had to figure out how to edit this thing together that I could also present the Romany and I could present Blissville without either one blowing out the other. And that was a trick, and it took a long time. And it wasn't until I read Rebecca's memoir of Blissville that I said, oh yeah, chapter structure. That's how I can get in the industry. That's how I can get in the cemetery. That's how I can get into gypsies. And that's how I can get in all of Blissville and its characters and keep going back and forth. So I don't know that I answered your question, but...
You kind of did.
Okay.
Blissville is so named because Greenpoint, the father of the modern-day street grid, the Greenpoint we know, the industrial Greenpoint, was a fellow named Isaiah Bliss, who was an engineer that moved across the river from Manhattan and married into the Messerol family, which were one of the 5 families of Brooklyn. Now, when I say 5 families of Brooklyn, people in this century have a whole different idea what I mean. But back then, there were Dutch landholding families that controlled the land around Newtown Creek. Neziah Bliss married into the Messerol family, and when he did, he worked with an early urban planner named Eliaphit Knott, and they laid out the modern-day street grid of Greenpoint, and they built the original Greenpoint Avenue Bridge, setting up in what's now Queens what would be an ideal workers' community. The idea was that there would be no saloons or bars or anything like that. Then the railroad came through and the Irish came with it, and that was the end of no saloons or bars. The Blissville was a pretty thriving community up until about 1848, when the Roman Catholic Church founded First Cavalry Cemetery in it and began to gobble up the land. It's an interesting thing. The Polish actually came to Greenpoint originally for work. There were sugar factories here, there were rope factories here. The on-site work conditions were absolutely miserable, and the only people they could convince to do it were the Polish. And the Polish were the hardest workers that anyone had ever seen, but they were working in conditions that literally made Dickens blush when he saw them. The thing is, a lot of people move on. The Jews, the Italians, the Irish, they all migrated all around New York Harbor. They went to Long Island, they went to Westchester County, they went to New Jersey, but there are certain communities that always stay behind. In the case of Greenpoint in particular, it was the Polish. And this became Little Poland. The question that I would ask each one of the panelists is, when you think of home, where do you think of?
That's funny. I actually was thinking about this a lot, and since I'm always an outsider and I've traveled around so much and am never really from the place that I am in, I have to make my own home inside a bubble that's just a radius of my own.
So you carry home with you?
I guess it's a feeling of warmth, and maybe, like I said in the film, the sun is always constant because it's always the same sun that I look at sunrise and sunset. But I find feelings of home in Greenpoint, like when I smell the bakery or the linden trees, it reminds me of home, but really I have to create home inside myself.
For me, it's also like work in progress because I'm from Poland, but my parents, they live here. My brothers, they live in Poland. I used to live for a long time in South America. So yeah, it's like the mixture of my experience that I am also carrying with me. Yeah.
Well, I guess I think that I have this kind of split. I have a house upstate, a little tiny old 1859 farmhouse. It is, it has home to me, but I love the city, and so I'm just feeling fractured all the time, and it is where I am. It's either here in Brooklyn. It's always Brooklyn. It's not the rest of the world. And or this little tiny town called East Jewett. So I think that I'm split between those two. Mitch, just to say, Rebecca and I have two other things that we want to say.
Oh, we'll get there, but first let's get Rebecca to answer the question as well.
I think I would say my garden, wherever that garden is, but it's mostly in Blissville, and it's been in Blissville for about 30 years, so I think that's where I feel the most home.
Rebecca and Hank would like to describe a threat that's going on in there to Blissville right now. I think that's what you guys want to talk about, right?
Yeah, I just want to say briefly that my video is only part of my project. The much bigger part of the project is accessible at blissvillestories.org. And that one-word website address, people from Blissville can add to the project pictures, stories, whatever critiques of the video if they want, or they can put up their own video of their own version of Blissville. Also, people can put up stories and pictures and videos of any other town that, or any other place that they think is in the spirit of Blissville. And I have a number of people that have contributed a lot of things there. There's also a section on blissvillestories.org for further research and new things as they come in, such as the excellent footage that Mitch posted of the Kosciuszko Bridge being taken down and floated down the Newtown Creek. There's also it said staff that we...
Blissville is about to receive its third homeless shelter. We are a really scrappy community in Blissville, and we do know how serious the problem is. And because of our scrappiness, some of us have either been homeless before or been on the verge of homelessness, and myself included. So we know personally how serious the issue is, and that's why Blissville itself is so precious to us, because it's our sanctuary. We're also very generous, and we are only 375 adults at this point and about 100 children. Some of us refugees, some of us Spanish more than English. And we house 2 shelters already, one for 120 men and another for about 150 mothers and children. And that's a lot for a tiny community to absorb. The city is now going to site another shelter, all within around 5 blocks of each other, for 330 adults. And that's in the big hotel that you saw in the movie. It's taking a large population, a vulnerable population, and tucking them away out of sight in Blissville. You know, this level of homelessness in Blissville, it will devastate it, it will swallow it. And the city doesn't care. But if you care, the most effective thing that you could do is tomorrow make a call to, and take out your pens, take a piece of paper, look it up, Google it, but is to pick up the phone and call the office of the president of the city council, Corey Johnson. He's new and he's got a lot of energy. And his phone number, I don't see any pens and papers, but I really hope you will pick up the phone. His phone number is 212-788-7210. And if you want to get more involved in any way, we could use the help. See me after.
All right, so Martynka, after the globe finds its way into McGolrick Park, what's next?
In the park, or for me, or what?
For you, what's next?
Don't ask me. I have to recover first. Maybe. Okay, yeah, that's a bad answer.
Look, we're looking for brilliance. So
Actually, no, let me, that's not true. I applied for a grant, actually, to GSEF to continue the Meadows legacy, meaning like the Meadows going
For
to...
those not in the know, that's the GSEF Community Environmental Fund, which is part of the settlement from ExxonMobil that was paid to the community for the presence of the oil spill.
Okay, so the meadow, the sculpture's only allowed to be in the park for 12 months. And I have already grown a meadow that's had a lot of money go into it, that's native, and it's a habitat for birds and insect pollinators, and for the enjoyment of humans. I kind of have this grand vision to rewild New York City parks one at a time and bring back the wilderness.
Awesome.
So if this GSAF grant gets approved, the meadow will be sustained, and hopefully we can have it irrigate itself because there's no water source in the Gorlick Park, and we're going to extend it to the plot across from the Russell Street area that I have, and grow a woodland sort of like clearing of slightly more shady plants, and it will provide plants that can be transplanted to the Newtown Creek. What's the bank restoration park that they're growing? This is like all grand plan. And I don't know if it goes well, maybe we could rewild other parks, bring back the wilderness.
I look forward to this.
Because honestly, I was thinking about my answer to where home is, and I think I answered incorrectly, because home is really nature. Anytime
All right.
nature, so I think all of us can relate to that, so yeah.
And Marzena, does Olga have plans? Are you going to be researching anything new? And by the way, those Polish parties from the 70s and 80s looked a lot like the Jewish parties over in Canarsie. Yeah. So, you know, we drank Seagrams, not the Spiritus, but, you know.
Olga actually, I don't know if she's still working on this, but one of the ideas she had to follow up with this project, and she might have changed her mind since then, but was to do a parallel film about the people that are left behind in Poland that are the family members. And she came on the trip with me when I was collecting soil on behalf of the seniors here, and she's very interested in hearing the side from Poland of the people that are the grandchildren and the cousins and whoever who are in Poland talking about their...
I think what I've been to now, and I got a grant last summer, last winter actually, for touring the state with the video, and I went to every corner of the state and played in art centers, historical societies, and libraries, and one state prison in the Adirondacks, where the people were, the prisoners were all from Queens. They were extremely interested in the Blissville video. I really enjoyed traveling around upstate and going to small towns, and I started shooting, and I shot a lot. Just like some days going from one thing to another, you know, I would stop 10, 15 times just shooting things. And just a little preview of that. I don't know if I was jinxed to say it, except I discovered these guys, and they're like a mixture of people, not just guys, who built these things called doodle bugs. I know the name is ridiculous and all, but they are hybrid vehicles between farm equipment and early automobiles. And I discovered that they'll take a 1927 Chevrolet tractor and put a Ford back end onto it, so they use them functionally. So I'm just sort of fascinated by that creativity and the whole process. They don't do it by welding; they do it by fitting. And there were many other examples, like little towns where they specialize in building silos and all sorts of things, just wherever across the state, and including Long Island too. Anyway, I found beautiful towns. Belfast, New York is fantastic. and Batavia and
This is going to take 27 years.
maybe.
Rebecca, you also have a website or a Facebook group you'd like to promote? In terms of the Blissville Civic Association and...
We will, and we don't yet.
Okay. So at this point, I'm going to ask for a round of applause for the artists and the filmmakers.